It's a beautiful summer's day today. It's the perfect day for week 5 and hydrangeas. And I love hydrangeas, and not only because they're blue. Just a couple of hydrangea studies. So today, just to be different, paper, I'm using the Fabriano cold press. You'll need a little bit of bleed-proof white to mix with your pink, and you'll need a fine line marker. I'm using a Micron 005. So I have my flowers here, and I admit it takes a certain amount of mental agility to do pink flowers when you've got blue ones right in front of you, but we'll give it a go. Mix up a little bit of my bleed-proof white, and I'm going to put a dollop of it into this white section in my palette, just here. And the other thing I do after I've done the thumbnail sketch is I do a quick color chart for myself. So I begin my painting by painting in an area of wet for the sideways flower and a larger area in the front for the front-on head of flowers, and I start by tucking in some pink into this lower corner down here and onto the side. In almost like a semicircle here, and just half of it, and you let the colors just bleed into themselves and just catch that drip before it runs sketch, and you know roughly where the leaves are going to be. So you're going to mix up a nice green for the leaves and start painting them in. For my greens, I'm going to use 51. I'm going to use a little yellow, number 40, and I'm just going to mute that with a little bit of my favorite periwinkle, number 60. So I want a very, very pale color to begin with, and I'm going to put in the suggestion of the stems or the stalks that support that sideways flower head, like that. And then I'm going to put in, I'm going to put in the 2 stems. So one on the side, very pale, and one coming down the front. And I've broken the one down in front so that I can have a leaf crossing over. And I see that I've smudged that, but we don't worry because we know we're going to spatter at the end. I want a leaf that looks as if it's from the side or the back view. I put more periwinkle into the mix and I make it much, much paler. Sideways leaf here, relatively pale, more periwinkle. So I paint in the pair of necks here because I want one of my flowers to sort of curve over and come across in one line, and that's going to be one side of the center vein. Just south of that center vein, I paint inside of one side of the flower, and I don't worry too much about the shape because I know I can correct it with the pen line. Add in the top side of the leaf. With my next leaf, I vary the color recipe a little bit. I want a sideways leaf. It's paler, it's got more of the periwinkle in it. I'm going to have a leaf running across this stem too. I deliberately have a couple of sideways leaves. Whoops, my paint is running. And I have a couple of front-on ones. Just going to catch this drip. Okay. Very wet today, hence the drips, but you won't be painting your paper and holding it up, so you should be okay. It has a ton of leaves and they twist and they turn and they're really beautiful. So I'm going to put in a couple more into my paint. I've added a couple more and you'll see that I've got the silvery grey, the medium and the darker leaves. And because I've got some space up here, I think I'm just going to quickly paint in a couple of hosta flowers. So the hosta flowers weren't in my original plan, but I have them on the desk and I feel I've got the space for them. My hosta flower, and it's a very simple flower to paint. It's basically a stem with the support, the buds, and a little bit of a trumpet. So it's a nice easy flower to tuck in whenever you have an awkward space. Hosta flower, you'll mix up 61, the periwinkle, and a little bit of 34, and you'll paint in the buds at the top. Just a quick suggestion of them. And then you'll paint in the trumpet shape. And again, don't worry too much about the shapes on your painting because you'll be able to correct them with your pen line. Suggestion of the hosta. We're now going to go in with a darker pink and put in a little suggestion for some of the individual flowers on our plate. A little bit of that darker pink and start to put in some suggestions of individual hydrangea flowers. And you don't have to be too accurate and you don't have to put in too many. Less is more in this context. Just like that. Maybe one or two, but only one or two just at the top and not too many. And this gives it a nice shape. At this point, you can see how wet some of it still is. For example, the leaf right here. So we run into that horrible word, wait, and you try and draw on wet paint, you wreck the point of your marker. So really you have to walk away from the painting at this stage. Everything is almost dry, so I'm going to add some of these dark marks to my leaves, just as I've done. Too many, but I just add some just to suggest the vein pattern. We have to wait just a little while longer before the pen. So finally it's about dry enough, so we're going to go in with our marker. And with the marker you just want a very light touch and it just enables you to define any shapes or just give a little bit of contrast. So this is how I start, and I go beyond the register of the actual flower. I can use the pen line to define the shape of the leaf and give it a much prettier shape. So I think it's nice if you're not too exact with the shape of the flower, but you keep it nice and loose. You refer to the shape, but you're not too hidebound. Each of the leaves gets a little bit of ink because if you do most of them but you leave one out, it looks a little bit odd. But don't go too overboard. And finally, just as we did with the geranium exercise, I like to end with a little spatter. So you load up your brush and you make sure it's got lots and lots of liquid on it. And you just lightly tap it as if you were your great aunt knocking off cigarette ash. Don't wear your best clothes for this. Just a little bit. And then maybe we take some green. Oops. And if you have made any marks, this is a very good way to disguise them or cover them up. And here you have your beautiful fresh hydrangea, the essence of summer to keep or to give away. So thank you so much for joining me today.